Hey, everybody. You're watching Wake Up Call Live again, and we are back. We are back to the Harry and Meghan story. Round two. Meghan and Harry, yay or nay? And joining me today is Diana Schimmel. You've seen her on here a million times. She is one of the founders, right? Founders of Martine, Katz, Scanlon, and Schimmel. It's a law firm in New Jersey and Pennsylvania practicing family law. And a first timer on the show is Dana Richardson. Thank you so much for being here today, Dana. She
Thanks.
is also a partner at Tibbet and Richardson. It's a law firm in Pennsylvania that does family law and criminal law. So thank you both ladies for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So, I did round one of this, and I was only going to do one of this topic, but I had such an overwhelming response of people that wanted to participate that I just decided to do two. And coincidentally, I didn't plan it. The first one, there weren't any, I shouldn't call them this, but I've been calling them Meghan haters. But, people that aren't really Team Meghan. I haven't been getting I didn't get them on the last one. And I kind of wanted somebody to offer like a different opinion.
You'll get that from me today.
Okay.
I am anti-Meghan.
Right. And I really I want to hear like what people think that are not the biggest fan of Meghan, because I really want to understand where that's coming from. And Dana, we'll find out. We'll find out which team you're on.
Okay.
But you guys saw the Netflix documentary?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So what did you think?
Well, I don't want to go off on a anti-Meghan rant, but to me the whole thing smacked of disingenuous hypocrisy. I think that they made a lot of comments when they were leaving the royal family, Megxit as people have called it, that they wanted privacy, they wanted respect, they wanted to live their lives and be out of the public spotlight. But while they were telling everybody that, they were filming this documentary. So this was filmed contemporaneous with their preparation and their exit. And I think that it smacks a lot of, we want our privacy, but we don't. Please still look at us. Let us be the victim, though. And we only want you to see us the way that we want to be seen. And at the end of the day, to me, I think the root of why I don't love Meghan or see her as the victim that I think she wants us to see her as is she's an actress. And I felt like these interviews she was doing throughout the documentary were very calculated. She was, planning her words, and she was using a tone that I felt was disingenuous, and she knew what she was doing. And I think that a lot of what she was saying was different slightly from what she said in either interviews in the past or what's been reported. And to me, it just furthered my dislike of the way that the whole situation has evolved. I'm not going to say my dislike of her personally. I'm sure she's perfectly lovely, but I've always been very pro-royal. My name is Diana. I'm one of those 80s kids that were named after Princess Diana. So I've always been involved and interested. But I think that Meghan just didn't come across like I think she thought she would, which is this victim. And to me, the documentary really furthered what I already thought.
Okay. That sounds well thought out. What do you think, Dana?
Well, I think I think just a little bit differently about it. I think all of these shows are scripted to a point, and they're produced, and so there's certain elements that production wants to get across. If you've ever worked on a reality show or know a lot about what goes on in the background of some of these productions. I do, know people, in the business. They're produced and then they're edited. So, people could say one thing and then they're edited for either sensationalism or stakes, and they build that in. So they're just not as, I look at them through a lens as they're just not as real as that we all hope that they are or think that they are with a lot of these different productions that are out there. I like the point that, and I hear a lot of people making this point that you made about the fact that they're talking about they want to be left alone and, kind of be out of the spotlight. And to that point, I kind of would just like to add that I get it. I get what you're saying, but that's all they know how to do. So I think that there's a difference when we're talking about, that British tabloid where they prey on people and they're just very aggressive and over the top, and stepping back from maybe some of the over the topness versus, having it their way is just kind of like where I'm kind of viewing it from. And I think that maybe they wanted to get away from some of the just that radicalness of it. I'm not sure. I don't dislike them. I kind of just have my eye on them because I'm curious. So my thing is I stay curious, and I kind of like their vibe a bit. And I think there's a part of me that hopes that part of them, that giving part, that spirit, that giving spirit that they portray is actually, actually true, because that's what matters to me most, rather than their desire to be in the spotlight, because that's the only way they can make money. He can't go to McDonald's. He can't, come work for one of us in our farms. Like, there's just too much heat on them. Like, what else can they do besides film or make appearances? That's the only way they're going to eat.
That's a good
Yeah.
point. That is a good
That's
point.
true. But I kind of interpreted what I've heard so far from them on the documentary, and some of the interviews that came after. I don't know if you saw the one he did with Anderson Cooper, but it seemed to me that they weren't necessarily saying, and I could be wrong, maybe I'm just not remembering the parts that are convenient to my cause, but I thought that they were really saying not so much that they didn't want to be at all in the spotlight. I think his real problem is that he feels they were fed to the wolves. They were fed to the wolves to protect Will and Kate, because Will and Kate were sort of jealous. If anybody watches The Crown, back in the Prince Charles and Princess Diana days, Charles was allegedly jealous of the good media attention that Diana got, because he wanted to be the media darling. And from what I keep hearing consistently is that Will and Kate had their communications people actually leaking sensitive information to the media so that they could write these terrible sensationalist stories about them. And Harry and Meghan are complaining that, why aren't you protecting us? You're the family. You're supposed to be protecting us, not throwing us out there so that, you guys can look better. I feel like that's what they were saying. Did you not get that?
I didn't. And I think that part of my issue with it is that their story has changed. So when they did the Oprah interview, it sounded a lot more like they wanted to protect themselves, not only their privacy, but their mental health. There were some other attacks. They didn't start overtly coming out and saying that Will and Kate were behind any of this until recently. And it's contemporaneous with the release of Harry's book, Spare, where he really goes in on his brother. And I think it was tied into the timing of the release of the documentary, Meghan's podcast, Harry's book. They PR'd this to the high heavens. And I think that really, there you go. There you go.
I'm waiting on my copy. Yeah.
Yep. I'm an audiobook person, but I'm listening to it too. So I think that was one of my bigger issues with it, Christina, is that their story on everything changed. Even Meghan's story on how she was introduced to Harry changed. And there were so many things in the documentary that I felt we could go back and either review commentary from her directly or them directly about, and say, hey, this kind of doesn't match up. One of the things that really stuck out to me, and this was somewhat innocuous, but it was funny because it had to do with fashion, where she's making the comment about how she's not allowed to wear the same color as the Queen or bright colors because she didn't want to stand out. And then there's all of these public appearances where Meghan is wearing ridiculously bright clothing and over the top colors, and very often wearing the same color as someone else in the royal family, often the queen. So that was where I felt like Meghan lost me a little bit with some of the credibility there, that she was trying to say something different now than she had said in the past.
And I wonder if I could interject.
Yeah.
I did listen to that. I watch all of this stuff, The Crown, the everything. It just interests me so much. But I just when you're talking about stuff like that, I wonder, like, if we saw what happened to Diana, and we know how much the royal family likes to play kind of like those practical jokes. Like, they seem to be like a bunch of like characters, but like almost in a hazing sort of way. How do we know that wasn't a part of some kind of, hazing, or, something that they told her and she's like, well, I'm gonna do this anyway. We just don't know enough. You know what I mean? So I think for me is I always take some of that stuff with a grain of salt. I don't necessarily believe it, because we saw what happened to Diana, to some pretty extreme, circumstances, and where she was making cries for help. But in public, she kept her head up, her smile on her face. Meanwhile, she was becoming, emaciated, and suffering from depression and anorexia and everything else, all the while crying for help. So I wonder, I do take some of this stuff seriously, because I think they are that family, in my opinion. They do have like a pretty kind of like a hazing thing that they do to people that come into it. So
it definitely seems like that family really needs some strong family therapy, and they need to work on their communication skills, because they don't talk about anything, it seems. They're
Right.
They don't. I thought about that earlier today when I was thinking about, coming on here. I was like, they really do have communication issues, like to like severe. And you remember the one part where Harry's like, it's not like, my grandma sits us down and she's like, okay, right. So this is what it means to be, in the royal family. And I'm like, maybe they should do that. She was like the queen for like 70 years. She has something to really offer. Maybe they should have all sat down and had a class on what it meant to be royal and what was expected of them, because a good deal of them just like spin out and do all kind of.
Yeah.
Well, Harry talks about this in his book, that I'm not very far into it yet. I don't know how far along you are, Diana, but he says that when his mother died, his father came into his room. It was really early in the morning, and there wasn't much of a conversation about it. It was just, he calls him darling boy a lot. And, darling boy, mom didn't make it. And that was kind of it. And there was really never another conversation about it.
Yeah, there's also the anecdote that his father didn't give him a hug. I don't doubt that Harry has been through a lot of emotional turmoil as a result of the lifestyle he's lived. But what I don't quite understand once Meghan got involved was, how does she claim that she didn't know? That was one of her big claims as well, that she didn't know that any of this was going to be happening. She didn't Google him or understand the dynamic. And that, I felt, was another piece of disingenuous, narrative on her part. And we've known notoriously, and this is partly what happened with Princess Diana, that the firm doesn't comment on the public and the media. And yes, of course, there's this whole undertone of they leak certain stories. They've got certain arrangements with certain publications and whatnot. But I feel like Harry is expecting something from them that he's known that they have never done, not even with his mother. And he wanted something different from the firm that I think wasn't going to happen. And when he didn't get it, I think now we're seeing a completely different reaction where he's really vilifying them in a much more extreme way. And that's where, again, I think they're losing some credibility from me, is they're not keeping it focused on themselves. They're now sort of lashing out and really aggressively lashing out. One of the anecdotes from the book, and I haven't gotten to the section yet, but I've been reading about it, is where he talks about William, physically fighting him. And we all should remember that for a very long period of time, pre-Meghan, Harry was the wild child. There were stories in the media about Harry all the time, with his temper and his drinking and his partying and doing what he needed to do, to blow off steam. And no one's faulting him for that, but he's now trying to rehab this image and say he's the demure one and it's William who's, the bad guy. And again, I don't quite see how that lines up with what we've already seen over the years.
Well, I think one thing he said is that in one of the interviews he did recently on his media blitz for the book is this is the way that I interpreted it, is that William won't just, have the fortitude to just say it publicly. And, partly because he can't. He's just been trained from the time he was an embryo not to do that, right? That you just don't do that. Especially because he's going to be king one day. But Harry is basically saying, you know what? I'm not going to address this stuff by leaking to the media. I'm going to do it now. I'm going to do it as an adult, as person with integrity, and I'm just going to say it. I'm going to say it in my book. I'm going to say it on these TV shows, and you will have to face me at some point. I feel like that's the message that he's trying to send to his family. Whether that's actually going to do anything, I don't know. They're not going to change. Queen Elizabeth ruled for 70 years. I mean, she never changed, right? She perpetuated that, and she would continue to perpetuate that. That's how she taught the family to be. But I think Harry would like to see things change with the times.
I agree. And did you see the one part of the series, of the documentary? One gentleman was on there. I forget his role, but he said, if you're royal, you just keep quiet. You zip it, basically. And I thought, but why? Is it because of when you're thinking about 70 years ago, Queen Elizabeth, she was a woman, in a time where women, we aren't as we are today, with that strength and that being vocal. Was that ingrained in her to just be quiet and demure and, kind of stay in her place? Because where did that come from? I would think that at some point that would have begun to change. And maybe now's the time, especially with Charles. He didn't always play ball either when he was, a teenager. Mm-hmm. I'm really surprised that he's the way he is now. I'm in part because he supposedly wants change and wants different, amendments to be made about, being in the royal family. So I just wonder why, he would continue that legacy of just, zipping it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think he has a wonderful opportunity to just change, grow with the times. I mean,
right.
There's always been speculation about the Brits getting rid of the monarchy because it's like, why don't we need them anymore? Like, isn't this just kind of outdated?
I think it's cool, but
I think part of it though is we're looking at this as Americans.
Yeah.
Sure.
So Americans live out loud. We express ourselves. We say what we think. Free speech is one of the foundations of our country. The British stiff upper lip is one of their foundations. So right. They approach things much differently than we do. And I think that's also the reason why Meghan is so polarizing, is sure. Because she's encouraged Harry to behave, some might say, more American. And they live in America now. They're living their lives out loud. And so maybe the monarchy progressed as much as it could under Queen Elizabeth, or, it progressed to the point where it could be where it's at now. But again, that's where the British people or the British sensibility is willing to take it. And I agree with you, Christina, when you say he's pushing his family so hard to respond. And I just don't know if he's going to get the response that he wants. And I'm afraid they're going to be so overexposed that it's ultimately going to backfire and have the opposite effect. Because for me, I didn't feel how I'm feeling about the documentary when I saw the Oprah interview. I thought the Oprah interview was well timed. I thought it was well spoken. I thought that was much different than the tone of what we're seeing in the documentary. It was much less overexposure and it was more candid. I didn't sense that Meghan was putting on that actor voice. I didn't sense that she was saying things to, Harry to encourage him or coach him. And they were also a little bit in a different position timeline wise. And I think they had a different focus in that interview. And that interview talked a lot about the institutionalized racism, about, the fact that she was an American divorcee, which we've seen in the monarchy as a theme before. So I felt like those focuses and those topics were a little more I don't want to say believable, but maybe that's the word. They were a little bit more digestible for the public, especially, seeing it at that time, as opposed to the documentary, which, as Dana said, it just seemed produced.
Sure. And when you talk about timing, if I could just interject,
Yeah.
I mean, I think they got to strike now because it's just all going to become old news.
Mm-hmm.
They got to get their coins now. You know what I mean? Good or bad, I think, because we'll just lose interest. It's like one of those things where we better get this stuff out now while it's being sensationalized, and get our coins.
Well, they signed $100 million deal with Netflix.
Yes.
From what I saw. And I would guess that they have some creative control over the production. So I don't think that anything that they didn't want in that Netflix documentary was in there.
Right.
I think they approved of whatever was in there and the editing.
Well, but I think to the point about the editing piece, editing doesn't have to be a negative either. I think they were able to edit it to the version they wanted it to be. Like I said, there were inconsistencies with even the story about Meghan meeting Harry and the blind date and all of that. I think there were differences in her retelling of it in the documentary than we've heard from her in the past. So it was like their do-over to say exactly what they wanted to say in the perfectly packaged way, because they did have the most creative control over the documentary.
She does come across as too perfect.
I can't debate you there. Yeah, it is cleaned up. It's very clean.
Meghan herself, though, like too perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, show us a wart. I wonder too how much of it is. Somewhere it was said that Will referred to her as being really abrasive and rude, which is kind of hard to believe from the way she's presented so far. But, she's American. And sometimes just the way that we express ourselves is very different. And or just expressing ourselves at all about certain things.
Absolutely. I think the smallest thing could be perceived, like you said about the stiff upper lip. The smallest thing could totally be taken as abrasive and rude, I think.
And I think at the end of the day, this is a family. I mean, the dynamic between brothers and sisters, between sisters-in-law, I mean, I'm going through with my own family right now. I feel like everybody has some version of this. And the smallest thing that you think might mean nothing, like there was an anecdote about how Meghan asked Kate to borrow her lip gloss. And some people were so up in arms about this. And Kate was angry about, like, to me, I wouldn't care, but maybe somebody does. So I think that there probably were a bunch of small things that happened. And that's okay. Meghan and Kate maybe aren't, compatible. Maybe they aren't. But at the end of the day, they have to still get along as not only sisters-in-law, but also as royals. And I think that was something that to me was off-putting about Meghan, because especially when you're joining a family who's in the public eye, you still have to get along to some respect. And I think she expected there to be much more of a reception to her than there was. And for better or worse, I feel for her on some level, but I think she wanted more of a reception and more of a center stage than she was getting. And that probably also informed some of her behavior as well.
I wonder how much of it, though, is she just came into it. And I mean, I don't think any of us, especially as Americans, can really appreciate what it must have been like to have to live in that environment with all of the formalities. I mean, we know that they exist, but it's one thing to see it from the outside and just envision what it would be like. And it's another thing to actually go there, marry a prince, and have to live it. And Meghan actually said somewhere that she thought that, but behind closed doors, they kind of dispense with the formalities. But she said they don't. If it's just you and the queen, you still have to curtsy.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I'm Team Meghan, because I think, she's not perfect, but a lot of people are saying, well, how did you not know what you were getting yourself into? I believe that. How could you know what you're really getting yourself into in that family?
Well,
I'm wondering, didn't Harry tell her anything? Like, these people are going to be nasty to you. like watch some of my mom's old stuff, or didn't he even watch it? Like some of this just goes through my mind because I'm like, on one hand, he's like, I've blocked a lot of this out. So I don't even know if he knows what's out there and what exists, or how much he can remember because he was little. But I just sit and wonder, like, didn't he tell her, like, they're really going to give it to you? Like, you don't understand. This is not going to be pretty.
I don't know if I expected that.
He might not have known. I mean, he's a man. So he might not have known all of what was going to happen, with her as a woman, as an American, as, a multiracial person, as a divorcee. Right. We don't know. And I don't discount that living in a pressured world like that, where they manage even, down to what color pantyhose and nail polish you can wear, is going to be difficult. But where, again, I lose some of my sympathy for Meghan is when she plays so doe-eyed about it. Like she had no clue at all. Like she had to know there was some protocol. And again, I agree with you, Christina. Maybe she didn't know the full extent. But to like say she was living under a rock and had no idea who Harry was and no idea what the royal family did, I just don't believe that.
I could see what happened is that she says somewhere, I'm a hugger. I'm a hugger too, so I can get that. But, the Brits, they're not huggers.
Me either.
Right? Oh, you're not a hugger. Well, I'm a hugger, Dana. I'm just going to warn you. I'm going to hug you.
It's all right. I'll take it, though. I won't haze you or be cruel.
No, and that's the American versus the British stuff. I completely understand.
I could see Meghan's experience being like, oh, this is my family. Come give me a big hug. And then she walks into the room and they're all just like, and she's like, what the hell is this? Right. I could see her getting iced out.
Yeah.
Because when you're a warm, inviting, like open person like that, and you're around people that are really closed off and tight, that's not a comfortable place to be for you.
They were probably like, look at her. She's really rabid, like she's feral. Like, look at her. This is awful. And all she wanted to do was hug and be a part of the family. So
I could see her being really uncomfortable in that kind of environment, and then getting to a point where she's like, okay, this is just how they are.
But then does it warrant the reaction? Does it warrant taking him completely from his family? I guess that's where I don't quite understand. I mean, some of the stuff should be tolerable from the perspective of the fame and the notoriety that she clearly wanted, the husband and the family that she wanted. Some of it is stuff that you need to be able to put aside. Again, some of the things that they maybe mentioned more so in, the Oprah interview than in the documentary, even though there was the scene in the documentary where they're being quote unquote chased by the paparazzi and they're so alerted and scared about it, which again, I thought was very highly produced. But I think, what did she really expect? And did it warrant the reaction or the scorched earth, I guess, action of completely leaving and having him sort of sever ties with his family completely? And that's where I don't see the connection.
Well, I do want to respond to something you said, because I hear this a lot, is that she took him away from his family. He is a grown-ass man.
A grown-ass man.
I knew you were going
to say that. Go ahead.
Look, I don't doubt it. It's a polarizing comment, and men have their own minds. They can do whatever they want, but he was committed to his marriage and he chose his marriage over his family. And whether that's her influence or not, it's completely him or not. My point being that she made issue over things that I don't necessarily warrant him completely leaving the family. Now, if there are bigger issues, sure. But her saying, oh, I wanted to give somebody a hug and they wouldn't hug me. Harry, we got to move to California now. It's a little different.
I think that, I'm not saying that that's what happened. I think it's much more complicated than that. I think that's just
there's racial stuff going on there too. I want
to hear your reaction to that, Dana, because I kind of cut you off. Like,
oh, it's okay. You said exactly what I was going to say. I don't think she has that much power over him. I think for him, he found a family. He had a family of his own. If you look at the relationships that he had within the royal family, in my opinion, maybe life was better, with his wife, where he was building peace and freedom versus being there and being in the firm. That's
He
just my
explained it
opinion.
in a way that I thought was really succinct. He said, everybody thinks that, because he addressed this in the documentary, I think. He said, everybody blames Meghan, like, she made me move away from my family. She didn't. I did this. He says it. I did this. This was my decision. He even says it was my idea. I know a lot of people don't believe that, but he says that. And he points out that, when life, what is he, like 30? He's somewhere around that age.
He's exactly my age.
Oh God,
our birthdays are only a couple weeks apart.
Oh wow, okay. So he says, when you go through your whole life being a certain way, and then you change because your life changes, and now I have this woman that I'm married to, and we're making a family together, and I'm being different. It's easy for people to say, oh, what happened? It must be her. She did this to him. And he's like, but she didn't. I changed. My family comes first now.
Right. Look at
I believe that. I totally believe that. And I think, when maybe he had these underlying feelings, but didn't have the catalyst to do it. And it just coincidentally was his building of his own family with Meghan. And especially when you become a parent, you really don't know or feel or act in certain ways until you are that protective parent for your children. And that might have also been for him the that impetus, because he wanted to protect his children from what he was seeing happen to him. So we have to acknowledge that too.
Right. Yeah. And look at Edward VIII and Wallace Simpson. Edward abdicated the throne to be with his love. And it was worth it to him. Why do we all think it's terrible for somebody to leave, a situation that could be harmful to their mental health or them in other ways personally, as we learn, the people that got you to one place in your life may not be there for the rest of the ride. And it shouldn't be any different for Harry just because he's a royal. Yeah. You know what I mean? He should be able to leave and find freedom and peace.
Well,
I think that's my coming back to the original comment is I think that's wonderful. If he wants to be able to leave and find freedom and peace, then leave and don't keep coming back with all of this media exposure. That's where my issue lies.
Yes.
I get
got to make coins.
They need to make money, and they need to, do what they can to support themselves. Yeah. But I don't think they need to do it at the level that they're at.
I think they feel like, or at least Harry, I think because again, this is Prince Harry's book. It's not the Meghan and Harry book. It's not Meghan's book. This is Harry's book. It's Harry's story. Right. And I think he feels like he wants to take control of the narrative because he feels like he didn't have control over that. Will and Kate allegedly, their team were leaking stories that weren't even true. That's what he says. And I think this is partly his way to take control of that narrative. I hope we're not hearing about it for the next 20 years. I mean, I hope they're going to move on to some other material, that's not related to that.
I think that the whole royal family just missed out on an opportunity. I think all of them together, maybe exploring change could have been a stronger force and gone a lot further than this. I hope they can heal, you know what I mean, if it's worth it to them. Because we don't know all of what's gone on or anything. But if it's just these, things that we're hearing about, and that's kind of like it, from all sides, not just Meghan, I'm thinking about all sides, maybe they can heal. Because, I mean, for goodness sakes, look at his daggone father. He's up there with his mistress as the queen consort. Now that just burns my butter.
I know.
Talk about
Me too. I am so anti-Camilla. You think I'm anti-Meghan? I am anti-Camilla.
I'm over Charles. I'm like, come on, Charles. You should have even did that.
You make a really good point about that they missed an opportunity because Queen Elizabeth was on the throne for so long. Charles is up there in age as well. So we're not going to see him and that older generation there as long as we saw Queen Elizabeth. The next generation is Will and Harry, and they really could have been this strong force together. So I agree with you. I hope that they reconcile in some way and that this is the worst of it and they get back on track. But they could have really changed the face of the monarchy once Charles was gone and really made it a different, more modern thing, a more modern institution.
Well, not to be really morbid, but what happens if Will dies? Because I know he
His
has a
boy.
son.
Yeah.
So
George.
Harry's not in next in line after Will. It's Will and then his children.
Right.
But what do you guys know what happens if Will dies when George is still a child?
George.
Well, George would still be the king. So you're saying if Charles dies and then Will dies,
Yes.
George. And then
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like if it happened right away. I mean,
He's
how can
still-
like I don't know how old he is, but he's a little kid.
yeah.
How does that happen?
yeah, that's who it would be. It's not Harry.
Even as a little kid? Like there
Even-
could be a 7-year-old king
Yeah. I think he would have
meeting with the prime minister to talk about war?
I mean, in my understanding of history, when they're not of age, they have someone stand in, like the mother or someone else that sort of steps in their place, a high advisor until they are of age. But it's not Harry. He would certainly not be the one coming in.
Okay.
Yeah. Think House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
You know.
I've seen that. I gotta watch that. I'm really behind. You know,
Oh,
once I
yeah.
start watching that, then I'll start roundtables to talk about that.
Ooh, put me in, Code.
Okay. Everyone will be like, where have you been? Where have you been? I haven't watched any of it.
Oh,
I just have to bring this up because I was thinking about it as we were talking. I think that J-Lo and Ben Affleck could learn something from all of this, because what I heard about them is they claim that the reason they broke up like the first time way back is because they didn't want to deal with, I find this hard to believe, they didn't want to deal with all the incredible, press and just Paps following them and intruding on their privacy. They didn't want to deal with all of that, so they broke up. I call bullshit. I think that's absurd.
I agree.
I agree. I thought it was his alcohol problem. And his
I don't know.
cheating.
Did he have one back then? I don't know.
I mean, I thought it was, he was partying and cheating. I thought that's what it was.
Oh, I don't know. But this is what they say now. I guess, we'd like to rewrite history.
Keep
When it's
it real. And I agree with you. Keep it real or don't say anything, maybe. You know what I mean? Don't just come back now and be like, oh, we didn't want the paparazzi. And to that end, here's where I agree with our Meghan disliker. And about the, fakeness. The one part of this documentary that really got on my nerves is when they were in the cars and they were like, is that a Pap? Is that another Pap? Are they following it? I was like, what is happening here? Mm-hmm. We get that but I can't imagine that stars really sit in their cars or, they're in their, the car service. Like, is that a Pap? Or are they following? Where are they? I mean, security's taking care of it. I think they probably sit and go for the ride. They know they're being followed.
And that to me was a completely staged scene. That was so staged. It was so staged. You did the exact reaction. That wasn't even exaggeration. They were like whipping their heads around, so panicked. And they were like, I forgot, I feel like they were doing some innocuous errand. Like they weren't even going anywhere that important. And they have so much security and protection. And they acted like they were reenacting the scene with Diana being chased by the Paps. And I thought that was so
melodramatic.
Yes,
so
that
melodramatic. That
was the one part I could say that I didn't really care for. I was like, we get it. Are you trying to do this so that we understand about the paparazzi? But we all understand about the paparazzi,
right.
How they can be. But this is the middle of broad daylight. There was like no other cars on the street. They're like ducking down. I'm like,
I feel like I have to watch it again now. I feel like
you're going to Kroger. Like, what are you doing? What's going on here? Why are you doing this? Like,
Well, you know what? We don't know Harry, right? Maybe he's a little bit of a drama queen.
Maybe.
We don't.
Or drama prince.
He might be.
Well, it's interesting when celebrities start complaining about being celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be like, come on, stop it.
You signed up for it.
Signed up for it.
Yeah, there seems, and they like it because I want to see that like the Paps completely go away, nobody care about them, and watch them have a nervous breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
right. But I think it's interesting how there seems to be a trend of all these documentaries coming out about celebrities. Like Gaga did one, Selena Gomez, J-Lo,
Paris Hilton,
Billie Eilish, like everybody's doing one. And it seems to me it's like a short-term commitment to a reality show.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can do it instead of a reality show. And it seems to me all they do is use it as a platform to respond to any kind of negative press or criticism that they've ever gotten.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And my first reaction is always, why are you responding to this? Like, why do you care? Are you cashing checks? Just go cash your checks, right? Like, don't you kind of need when you're in the public eye doing anything, like an actress, an actor, or sometimes an athlete, whatever Prince Harry is embarking on now, you do need to be in the public eye to kind of keep that going. Like the Kardashians, I mean, that's why they have that show. I mean, they even said it, that's why they moved from E to Hulu, is because that's like the main hub of all their advertising. Like everything kind of springs from that. And I think what celebrities don't get, maybe because they're on the inside of the fishbowl looking out and they don't quite get it, is when you get that much attention, you're going to have people that love you and praise you, and you're going to have people that don't like you and criticize you. You need to get over it. You can't have one without the other.
That's right.
And I'm tired of seeing these responses to, whatever, like Selena Gomez, I guess. I wasn't even aware that she had a lot of negative press, but apparently she was using it as an opportunity to respond to some of that. And to me, it's just like a really little violin.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like you hit the nail on the head that they don't want to do reality TV because then they can't control it. But with these documentaries, they can, and they can make it their own. And that's what Meghan and Harry did too. They made it exactly their own. And they could formulate whatever narrative they wanted it to be. But I agree with you. The real big stars, the A-list stars like Nicole Kidman and George Clooney, they just live their lives. They don't respond to any of this stuff.
Yeah. You're not going to see Beyonce or Oprah coming out and having any type of response.
Oh, you
they
mentioned
don't
Beyonce.
Yeah.
Speaking of Beyonce,
ooh,
that was another thing that bothered me about Meghan. She's like casually, oh, Beyonce just texted me. Like as if it was like run of the mill. That was so disingenuous to me. I felt like, what are you doing? Like it was very, very name droppy, very cringy. Yeah. That was another one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she's still surrounded by so much incredible privilege. She was before, but even more so now. So
right. She's still famous, was before and is now.
Yeah. All right. I feel like we have to end this before I become a Meghan hater. No.
We don't hate her.
No, I mean, no one's perfect, right? Like that's something else I had said in the first roundtable is we can't expect these people, the whole royal family, to not be human beings. They're human beings. They have crazy rules, and it seems to me a very unrealistic expectation about how they're supposed to live their lives, but they're human beings at the end of the day.
They are.
Yeah. I think underneath it all, they're probably very good people. And I do really hope that they're as a family can heal. I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great things. There could be great things.
Absolutely. And I think that when this all dies down, I do really hope and I'm interested to see what Harry and Meghan do and, continue their philanthropic efforts and in a Princess Diana sort of way.
Yes, absolutely.
I hope so too. That was one of their main things that they said they wanted to accomplish. So I hope that after this happens and they have what they feel like they need to have in their bank account and behind them, that they'll switch back to philanthropy.
Absolutely. Get back to Botswana.
That's right. That's right. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I enjoyed this conversation. It was nice to have a little bit of a different perspective from the last roundtable, and I will keep you in mind for the next one.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching Wake Up Call Live or listening to it. We'll be posting this on the podcast for anybody who wants to listen. Have a great week, everybody.
You too. Bye.
Bye.